Ripples on Deep Water by Orphaned Account on EU3. Episode 8. Chapter 8. Blood, Water. All the anxiety Izuku had amplified into full panic, and he lightly brushed his pant legs with the rod. The electrical jolt that ran through his body like a lace, and he had to bite back a loud swear. And with his pain tolerance, he knew that was powerful. But it achieved its purpose to help him focus. Sensei, Eraser's hand can't handle them alone, he says urgently to Majima-sensei. His teacher's eyes darted over to him as he was popping off the tips of his claws. They have a warp quirk, jammed radio signals, and most of 1A vanished to Kami knows where. My heart sensors are telling me they're everywhere. They have warped quirks. They have a warp quirk, jammed radio signals. Most of 1A vanished to Kami knows where. My heat sensors are telling me they're everywhere. Majami-sensei huffed a breath of air as he slowly spoke. You've got a good head on your shoulders, Midoriya. Try to find an escape. Get help. With that, he burrowed into the earth. Izuku, go! Mei-Mei's voice snapped him into hyperfocus. 3 villains were in the center originally. The one made of mist is fighting 13 now, but he moves so fast that the warper, the one is in the bronze, I think, he just stands there. Either it doesn't matter to him, or he's the product of a quirk to summon him as a sort of companionship, and he can't think independently. Third is that scrawny dude. He has a hand on his face. What the fuck? I think he's a leader? Miskman said something to him before warping to fight 13, and it would explain why he's inactive, but the muscle as a guard. I'll estimate from 50 to 80 with the size of the USJ and the amount of heat signatures around. Since this was planned, they're probably in zones that suit their quirks. None of the villains seem experienced. All small fry. Quantity over quality. Eraserhead alone can handle some unexperienced stress. Maybe 3, 4 of the center crowd before being overwhelmed. If the leaders don't intervene, since he specializes in subtlety sneak attacks, rather than group battles. With Power Loader, they can likely handle the full center crowd and possibly all 3 leaders, but they need backup, so we have to contact UA. Reike touched his shoulder deductively. Lay it on us, Midoriya. His eyes went up to the top of the dome. It was likely metal. Maybe plasteel? The dome. He realizes. The radio jam is probably from a quirk, but all quirks have a limit. I'm betting that this guy put it on the dome. If we can bust through the dome, we can broadcast a distress signal. Mei-Mei finishes, her crosshairs, eyes widening. Does anyone here have explosives? A pause. That is Big Boom Machine, right? Collins asked hesitantly, her words halting and the accent thick. Probably from nerds. Fuck. Izuku hadn't even considered how badly this was shaking up his classmates. Yes, Mei-Mei whispered, trying to keep her voice low. I have a heat beam, she offered, taking something out of the duffel, strapping to her back. Very strong. Could go through steel. You think it could go through past steel? She furrowed her eyebrows, thinking it over before nodding resolutely. It will take longer, but yes, I will need time. How long? Colin looks up, eyes trailing over the dome. Center is weakest. Looks like 3 minutes, maybe? Very bright color. Will be seen. Reike looked up as well, her eyes calculating. I have some drones that I can pilot. They're weaponized with... Well, don't tell Majami-sensei, but it's a bit of an experimental sleep gas that might send whoever inhales it into cardiac arrest. Izuku resisted the urge to facepalm, remembering he had a very electric, very versatile thing in his hand. Fucking fantastic! They have a bunch of experimental weapons that might work, and not a single combative quirk. No, he has to stop thinking like that. Quirks aren't everything. What's powering the laser? He asked Collins. Her face darkens a bit. Me? You have a power quirk? A long pause. More like Nuclear? I can make big boom or small energy. I can use small energy to power my support items. Oh, cool. You do that. Hina-kun, what do you have? Hinaka sneered at Izuku, and Izuku sighed internally. He so does not need this right now. I've got fucking nada, except for some experimental first aid items. Happy, shithead? Mei literally growled, but Izuku ignored it. Hanta, you need to stay here and cover Collins and Ray Ray. Reike, if I'm correct, when you link up with your drones, you go into a trance-like state? Reike nods. Then Collins will need to focus on the laser. You'll have to cover them. Hanasa glances at the two girls, briefly, indecision coming over his features. At last he spat. Fine. But if I get killed, I'm dragging you down with me for this shitty plan, Midoriya. Mei leaned forward, slightly threatening, and pulled something from her own duffel bag, which was, of course, something that every support designer should have on hand when they're in the battlefield. Is that a fucking flamethrower? Yup. Mei popped the pea with a grin, dumping it to his feet. The 5 students of 1F all looked at each other, hesitance obvious. Collins finally spoke, looking up from where she was assembling her laser. Midoriya, Mekari, Hatsume, if we make it out of this, call me Fiend. It's my country. My friends give each other nicknames. Hanata gasped at how he was blatantly left out, but the other 3 nodded, all managing small smiles. Wait, what's Midoriya's and Hatsume doing? Izuku's best friend stood a little taller at that, her smile manic and menacing. What Meiji-sensei says we do best. Be distracting. Izuku finishes with a sweeping of his arms, careful not to whack any of his classmates with the rod. When I give the signal, start the beam. Believe me, you can't miss the signal. Somewhere in the background, the boat explodes. Izuku froze, mind going into overdrive. The villains wouldn't be fighting each other. They all have the same goal. Whatever that happens to be... So that means the hero students are still here. The villains just scattered them. And some of them are on the boat that just exploded. Miruke realizes with a shaky voice. Izuku's legs moved faster than his head for once, but Mei was hot on his heels. He wasn't too far from the water, and this was probably a really bad idea, but he chucks a pink bomb into the water, and at the same time, Mei does as well. There was a terrifying moment when they hit the water that nothing happened. Heads come from the surface to look in the direction of the 2 support students. It all happened at once. The water quickly became murky pink. Then Izuku heard startled yelps as it solidified and kept expanding until it was at the shore. Izuku jabbed the rod experimentally in the surface. It was hard, but he stabbed it more, and it finally broke. He barely yanked his rod back in time to avoid being stuck in the pink bomb. 2 heads peered over the side of the boat. Mei cupped her hands, shouting, "It is safe to walk, but step lightly!" The 2 heads became full bodies, 1 purple and midgety, 1 green and flinky, that climbed down the side and picked their way over. As they did that, Mei kept watch as Izuku took inventory. 4 pink bombs, 1 radio charm, 2 Mei visions, 2 lightning rods, and 1 flamethrower. Who are you, kiddo? Asked the green-haired girl as she finally stopped at the shore, her tongue sticking out of her mouth a bit. Hatsume Mei and Izuku Midoriya of Support Course 1F. Mei said extravagantly, throwing out her arms, which Izuku just barely ducked, her rod nearly clipping his head. Our class was supposed to observe yours, but now things have gone sideways, and we're taking the reins here. I'm also Isuyu, kiddo. The green girl replied, tilting her head a bit. But call me Sue. The purple midget is crying and snotting everywhere, and Izuku doesn't like him very much at all because he looks like he's checking out Mei's chest at the same time. Izuku very deliberately steps in to block the midget's view and nods to Asui. If we survive this, I will, Our classmates are standing by with a plan to send a distress signal, and since the hero students are the only ones trained in combat, we need you to cover us. Can you do that? Asui nodded back, her face thoughtful as Mei Mei led the four of them to a dense bit of shrubbery. What's the plan, kiddo? I need to know your quirks. Midget Boy blubbers before saying, My quirk is called Pop Off. These balls are super sticky, and I can throw them. My quirk is called Frog, kiddo. I can jump like a frog and have a long tongue, and split a mild acid that burns a little, and I could spill out my stomach to clean it, kiddo. Izuku looks over the center area, wincing as he watches Majimi-sensei take a hit to the chest before burrowing again. Eraserhead is clearly fatigued. 13 is crumbled at the entrance. 2 hero students stand by their side. Fuck. If this works, we are 100% getting detention. He murmurs before turning to the hero students. Also, when we give the signal, there's going to be a thing that's very obviously called by the 1F happening, and you need to help cover the 2 girls behind it. Midget, you stay here, and you only attack if things go so far south that they start speaking South African. Midget nods through his tears. Izuku pulls his flamethrower out of his bag, slipping the straps over his shoulders and readying the nozzle. What's the signal, kiddo? This. Izuku stood up and walked out of the bush, Mei Mei right at his side. He loved how she just thought like he did. No extra communication needed. He pointed the flamethrower up as he approached the center, activating it and watching orange flames spill from the nozzle. Mei Mei took one look at her remaining pink bombs and threw it into the fire. It was a very big, very loud, very pink series of explosions that immediately drew the attention of most of the villains in the center. And it lasted just long enough to distract from the activation of the laser and cover the sounds of what was possibly Maja-sensei swearing loudly at how stupid his students are. Hi, villain leader, Mei Mei said both loudly and cheerfully. You seem to have made a bit of a mess in your attack scheduling. Skinny Handjob posed immediately, becoming more threatening. How so, little heroes? Izuku had slouched a bit already, his hair a certified disaster that didn't quite block his view of Asui, and Hanata kicking ass behind the main villain back. Warp Boy is being kept busy by Eraserhead. It looks like, which is always a good, he just needs to play his part. Be as himself as possible and distract Skinny Handjob. First off, shitty Handjob. Shigakuri Tomura. The villain seethed. Izuku almost smiled in victory. You got a name. Close enough. So, first, Shigito, we aren't hero students, much less heroes. Me and my friend here from the support course. Came here to basically spy on our dear friends in 1A, blah blah blah. It's a pretty recent change, so I'm guessing you didn't know about it. Yeah, the break-in was you, wasn't it? Mei Mei jumped in, giving a little bounce on the balls of her feet, ignoring the hostile look she was getting from the small fry villains trying to deal with Maji-sensei. That was really smart, using the media to cover it up. Honestly, Haya and I saw right through it, but those dumb heroes didn't have a clue. They really just can't think like us, He had no idea why all this fake names Mei Mei could give him. She chose Raya. But whatever. Shigito seemed to be eating up the indirect praise with a smile that crept around his edges of his mask. Was it? He gloated, scratching the back of his neck. I know those stupid heroes would never suspect a thing. Izuku didn't smile. Of course, but he plastered a fake one, all in the same. Do you mind if we ask what your motive is? We couldn't hear from our places. To kill All Might. Shigito stopped scratching, his hands stilling for a moment before he scratched harder. We even got this Nomu to fight him. But he isn't here. All Might? At UA? Wait a second. He had no idea who the Foundational's hero teacher was, except that he knew. All Might was around Japan more. Fuck! How could he have been so dense? Kami, I know the feeling. He sees the sugary... Kami, I know the feeling. He sees to Shigito's. It's like he thinks the sun shines out of his ass. I would ruin that man's whole career if I ever saw him personally again. Not surprised that the Pomeranian ass didn't show up to his own class. Mei jolted slightly at his words, but nodded seriously. Nobody fucked with my Rhea without paying in blood, and that blonde idiot fucked with him big time. Shigito nods, excitedly. I wish he was here so I could kill him. Several things happened at once. A black portal opened, dropping Eraserhead onto the concrete before Mistman came through himself. The top of the dome finally caved in. There was a large, terrifying familiar boom, pop, 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 from somewhere in the ruins area. Nemu, attack! Big Bird lunged for Eraserhead. Fuck. Yeah, that summed up the situation pretty well. Mei jumped forward, her ride striking out and jabbing directly into the Big Bird's arm. Big Bird stuttered to a stop for a beat, and Izuku took less than a second to marvel at the resident of the pain, and 2, realize Big Bird reacted to verbal commands, and 3, form a plan. The radio charm was as versatile as it was useful. When it exploded, they learned, it broadcasted a powerful signal. Mei had wired it to broadcast an SOS. It also made an incredibly loud screech sound that may or may not have also almost defeated the 2 of them on several occasions. Midget! It's speaking South African! Midget ran out of the bushes, screaming loudly, and successfully threw the attention of Shigito's as Big Bird picked up Eraserhead effortlessly, who was actively trying to fight it, and threw him basically to Izuku's feet. He winced at the sound of crushing bones as the underground hero gruffed loudly, in what was clearly pain. But Midget did his job well to give Izuku an opening. He threw one of his 2 remaining pink bombs at Shigito, yelling, Romeo Charlie! Mei hit the ground, rod clattering to the stone and covering her ears as Big Bird reverted from her last shock, and Izuku took the radio charm off the chain and jammed it into his last pink bomb. When it began beeping loudly, he knew he only had seconds. Yeet! The pink bomb stuck directly to the Big Bird's exposed brain, which was gross, and Izuku covered his ears, as did Eraserhead, seeming to get the message from Mei just in time for the entire thing to explode. He knew Big Bird must have some kind of resilience to pain or wounds, from how quickly he recovered from a high-voltage shock, but eardrums are the most delicate bits of skin in the body. They shatter easily, and if Big Bird had a super healing quirk and not resilience, it would overdo it and thicken the eardrums too much, making Big Bird deaf, or at least very hard of hearing. He was proven right when Big Bird went completely still, dead to the world, and especially the pink glob on his head. Mistman, having realized they had sworn loudly and warped himself and Shigito's away, but nobody else. Several minutes later, the dome exploded. I am here! Because this day couldn't get any better. My throat is in pain. I will say, I think my favorite part was when Izuku just said, they're speaking African, and Mineta came in. One, the fact that he was not referred to as Mineta the whole time. He didn't even get to introduce himself, and I find that hilarious. Love that, absolutely love it. Keep it up. It has cheered me up. I've had a really bad day today, in the sense of I feel like absolute shit. My throat is once again killing me, and apart from it once again killing me, I could last longer without having to drink a bit of water, but it still kills me. And give me a second. And it hurts and shit, but on that aspect, that is the least of my worries. My biggest worries is the fact that for some reason, there is, you know when you get a pimple, like, on your nose? Yeah. But there's no pimple. I don't see it. Oh, it's forming in there, inside. I see the formation. I see it. Anyways, that hurts like hell. For some reason in my ear, specifically one side of my ear, one of my ears is rejecting any form of earphone or ear thingy. And not only have I consistently woken up with fevers and for them to just slowly go away throughout the day, throwing up is something that I also do when I wake up. No, I'm not pregnant. 1, fever. 2, that would literally be impossible. Anyways, point taken is, throwing up is not fun. And I don't know if I'm throwing up because I'm sick or because I keep eating something that is bad. And I hope it's not the other one. I hope it's the first one. I hope it's not the latter. Okay? I wake up in shivers because fever. And, I feel like shit. I've had this excruciating headache in the back of my eyes for the past couple days. Basically, I'm going through the ringer, and, I'm glad that I only have to record 1 video a day. That's actually so relieving. Sometimes if I'm up on it, I can record 2, but like, I cannot record 3. I'm gonna be honest with you. Even sometimes I record 1.5, right? It just depends on how I'm feeling that day, okay? Okay. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.